enjoyed your coffee and had a chance to network with some of the brilliant minds gathered here today. I'm happy that you are again with us because we have an exciting lineup of speakers still to come. So here we go. For the next about 30 minutes, we'll be hearing from Mr. Tom Van de Wiele during his keynote session titled AI as the New Hacker Frontier. He's a speaker and a hacker at the Hacker Mind, and then brings a hacker's perspective on the intersection of AI and the cybersecurity. The lesson will explore how cyber attackers are leveraging AI to improve the efficiency and the cost effectiveness of their attacks. Additionally, Tom will also shed a light on the future threat landscape and provide insight into how organizations can adapt to the growing role of AI in the cyber threats. I guess everyone's excited for this hacking story as I am, so let's hear it.
Thank you. Everyone can hear me back? Good and back? Yes, okay. When I was about 8 years ago, my school teacher explained me how the mail system worked, which to me at least was magic. You write your address on a certain part, you put it in the mailbox, grandma gets the Christmas card. I was astonished. Not only was it my first way of doing long-form communication without having to shout, I couldn't believe that the post office would just do this from the goodness of their heart. Until, of course, they sat me down and said, actually, no, you have to buy a stamp with money. I was 8 years old. I didn't have any money. I was devastated. I said, maybe, if I tried to argue and negotiate, what if I put a really nice drawing on the envelope? They said, no, you can't do that because they'll send it back. Oh, okay, wait. They send it back. Where do they know where to send it back to? Well, you see, on the back of the envelope, you put your own address, and then the letter comes back. Wait a minute. So how do they know where I live and if it's my envelope? Well, they don't really know. So, since I was 8 years old, you write a fake address on the front, you write grandma's address on the back, and you post. And mail arrives. And they told me, look, you're not supposed to do this. You're not supposed to do this. I wasn't really listening. So I know that you all have very fancy tracking apps and getting, information about your letter was delivered and go pick up your parcel. And I don't mean to brag, but I already had this during the 80s, because every time that my family got mail from me, my parents got a phone call saying, we got your card and a fine, thanks. Yeah, well, Merry Christmas. And this is what you hear a lot. You're not supposed to do that. There's a lot of things in life that we do for which there's actually no real rules being enforced. I've been doing cybersecurity for more than 2 decades. When I'm in traffic, standing in front of the red light, what that means to me is that the red light works. That's about it. All the rest is stuff that you and I learned during our driving exam at that certain point when we took our exam, when we all looked young and beautiful on our driver's license pictures. And when I'm commissioned to break into companies, physically, over the internet, but usually both, and I show them that I was able to, perform their worst case scenarios in a safe and ethical way, or when I'm getting calls saying, can you get this hacker out of my network? Then the people defending the network always come down to the exact same reaction that I have heard in the last 20 plus years, which is the attackers didn't follow the rules we invented. I thought you were going to attack this. No, because I knew you were waiting there. Yeah, but why didn't you test our security that way? You mean that you could catch me and then go, good job. What value does that provide? So there's a fundamental disconnect between how cyber attackers attack and how people defend. Because unfortunately, the industry is always going to be behind when it comes to that. Cyber attackers are always in the advantage because it's their job. People tend to forget that attackers also have managers and budgets. And I'll go into this a little further in this presentation. So the way that we look at things from the attack side and from the defense side is fundamentally different. That is to say, I only need to find one way in, and the defenders have to defend every way in. But if you turn that around, you as a defender only have to detect me once in order to hopefully kick me out of the network and find out where I'm coming from and what I'm after. So the industry, the security industry, is always looking for where can we start with certain patterns. Let's throw AI on it, which they've said they already had for the last 10 years. Maybe the powered by AI was just, powered by anime and ice cream. I'm not sure what the AI stands for. But now we have 17.2% more detections with AI. And you ask yourself, what exactly are we doing here? So the industry always will be behind. As defenders, unfortunately, you are always behind. Because by the time that I've broken into your mainframe, did the payment or whatever it is that you want me to do, by the time you have figured out who should be in the meeting, I am long gone and already writing your report. Is it John for the web platform, or is it the application? Is it the cloud? No, I think this is platform. So you can have a pre-meeting to get to the meeting to say, right, whose responsibility is this? People are long gone. Attackers don't have to care about your structure. And when I'm doing incident response of getting the bad guys out, companies painfully realize that they're actually up against themselves. Because who do we call? More and more do I do my result presentations of the break-in that I did, once for the network team and then once for the security team, because the teams are not talking to each other. Which is not as bad as IT teams doing their own security, which is there's not a lot of security being done because they're allowed to self-police, unfortunately. And everything takes priority when it comes to production issues, obviously. So as defenders, you need to look at what can we make patterns out of? What are some of the more cheaper attacks doing when it comes to using programs and stuff like that? And then let's add it to these huge Star Trek-like dashboards where you see things pop up that says maybe a threat or red traffic light. But that's not where the attacks are necessarily happening. There's a story being told in incident response circles that goes a little bit like this. You finish work, you go down to the parking garage where your car is parked, and you see someone looking at the floor. So you are a good human being, so you step up to that person saying, what are you doing? Like, yeah, I lost my keys. Okay, yeah, I lost my keys over there somewhere. It's like, okay, if you know that you lost your keys over there somewhere, then why are you looking here? Ah, because the light is better here. And that is really how most of the security industry is focused on, which is patterns. And I know this is, can be confusing because you think, look, I'll just spend, more budget on, the attackers have a certain budget. We'll just have more budget or the same budget. And what I will go for you, with you also with AI is that it isn't exactly an equal setup. Because technology is hard. And the adoption of technology is even harder. So when you go to your New Year's parties and your Christmas dinners, and you have to explain what has happened in the last 2 years when it comes to AI, I like to summarize it in a very, very simple way, which is we made sand think. Silica sand produces silicon, silicon makes GPU chips. We made sand think. It doesn't really think, right? Or reason. Someone very famously said that computers can think in the same way that a submarine can swim. It's making a lot of swim-like movements, but it's not swimming, obviously. And what I'd like to cover for you today is the fact that most of the ways that things are getting hacked currently is because of the wrong assumptions. Is the fact that we are not all experts in everything. The same thing happens in the medical world. Whenever there's kind of a degree of uncertainty where your knowledge doesn't go any further, then there's always going to be criminals that will try to capitalize on that. You've seen this in the Western movies where there's always someone selling some kind of magical tonic that is good for everything. Always watch out for the things that are good for everything. Not a lot of things in life are. There's a very ancient saying that says, never buy something from someone out of breath. There's always a reason why maybe you shouldn't be doing that. But if you ask an AI, it will say, no, it's great. This person must be exercising. So AI doesn't have common sense, but when you talk to people that are working with AI systems or LLMs or whatever it is, they will have these assumptions that this thing will do what they think it does. But unfortunately, that is just like standing with me in traffic next to the red light to say, the red light works. That's it. Because people make their own rules at a certain point. So my guilty pleasure sometimes is going on Facebook groups using an alias and looking at people complaining about badly generated AI images. Like, how could you do this? I mean, this is tasteless. This looks like crap. And then going back to those groups and people saying, oh, thank you for no longer using AI images. They're still using AI images. They can't see the difference. It's a little bit like the army instructor that gets a little bit frustrated that no one's showing up to the last class of camouflage class. Like, you know, maybe they did show up, maybe they're very good at what they did. It's that kind of thing. So when people say like, yeah, I'll prepare for that for when it comes, I have news for you, as you probably know. It is already everywhere. And there's really easy ways of discovering where AI is already being used or misused, right? For example, if you take every single AI model that's available, you extract only the error messages, and you go look for those, I mean, you're going to find it everywhere. But that's the sloppy stuff, right? You can see where people have been using AI for auto-labeling, for data classification, but also for replying. I have a program that I run on Twitter, or whatever it's called this week, which is called Blade Runner, which will find bots online that are obviously bots. Which I think Blade Runner is a fitting name. If you understood that reference, please take care of your back and your knees. So AI is everywhere already. For the kind of things that cost a lot of money, and maybe we want to give this task to someone, but we all know that maybe we shouldn't be asking a human being, could you please manually label these 2 million pictures of butter? Let a computer do those things. I know that maybe we're taking someone's job away, but we have bulldozers now. We don't need 500 people with shovels. So if anyone is going to capitalize on AI, it's obviously the attackers. But not in the way that you might think. Because when you read the media, which is trying to drink from a fire hose, it's not deep fakes. And it's not, all the other things that are being put in the media about, oh no, AI. Now, obviously, disinformation is a huge problem, which we kind of did to ourselves. So obviously, we need to make sure that we don't make the same mistake as with social media. But AI is being used for attack, for the simple reason that models are everywhere. And you can use any kind of old hardware to run your own models at home. Or, as part of what people don't know about, is what's called cybercrime as a service. So you can buy computer access. There are people that do nothing else than scan the entire internet for default passwords, out-of-date operating systems, misconfigured services. They will gain access, and they will wait. They keep the access open. Once in a while, they'll come along and make sure that the access is still there. But then they will sell it off to certain people in that ecosystem called initial access brokers. These are people that will take all kinds of hacked databases where if you ordered a pizza 5 years ago and that pizza place gets hacked, well, now those passwords are on the internet. And someone is going to find them. And going to take the passwords and then stuff them, we call this password stuffing, trying to get into your Netflix, into your Disney Plus, into your bank. Same kind of buzz, the same kind of energy as when the internet was being introduced. We didn't really call it the internet back then. It was the information superhighway. No one really knew what that meant. If you're old enough, you remember what I'm talking about. See, but multimedia is coming. Remember that? That turned out to be a sound blaster and a CD-ROM drive. But hey, it was multimedia, right? And now we're here. And now we have the same thing with AI. You might just say, okay, but I don't understand the AI, but at least we're not talking about blockchain anymore, which is, it's an advantage as well. But this isn't like that. There has never been in the history of human beings a technology that has been innovated upon so fast as AI, that has so many use cases, whether it's just all the stuff that we have but kind of sucks, and of course new areas like robotics, where we have the displays, the batteries, the actuators, and now finally the actual models to make these things run. But technology is weird. Not all technology makes it. We are at an AI conference. You've never had so much compute power in your pocket with your smartphone, and half of you this morning closed your shoes with a piece of rope. Because it's the best thing we have, apparently. You don't hear the sound of Velcro in a lot of boardrooms, right? There's an immediate price to pay. This guy doesn't have his rope tying game together. Why are we using it? Did you know that electric cars came before gasoline cars? We've had them for ages. But that's not, a real cool car. It needs to smell. You need to put this crank in, and you need to turn the crank, and then only a manly man would buy those kinds of cars. And we got rid of electric cars. Not all technology makes it, and it goes so fast that we don't even have manuals anymore. And if we had them, no one's reading them. When's the last time you read a manual for your phone? Okay, some of you have maybe a few nerds in the room. I like my fellow nerds. But people don't know how to use high-tech stuff. That's the problem. And I know you know this because you and I have to sit in the train and the metro with people with their phone on speakerphone, holding their phone like this, like there's a carrot in their ear. This is not to be confused with the people who hold their phone as if they're speaking into a small biscuit, right? I think the next iPhone, when you get a call, you just have to snap it in two and we're back to this, right? We're going backwards. I don't get it. So if it goes too fast, it becomes magic. We have people who don't believe in bacteria or space. And I get it. Technology has limitations. It hasn't exactly done the things that we were promised. Have you used a spell checker lately? They kind of suck. Well, they don't, right? Up to 99%. And then you spend the entire afternoon putting in abbreviations and that you will only use once in your entire life and go, what am I doing with this? So AI is going to solve these kinds of things. But if you look at the broader spectrum as far as how do you gain access to someone, there's a certain model for this. We call this the kill chain. It's Lockheed Martin introduced this term, but we kind of use it in the actual industry. And most people think that the most cost or where attackers will leverage their attack will be at the end. The deepfakes, the disinformations, all that, where actually AI is the most valuable for an attacker at the first two stages. Who am I supposed to attack that will give me the most bang for my buck? All these deepfakes, yeah, they cost money, but not that much. Not in the larger, what we call the attacker taxonomy. Because who should we deepfake? And why should we do it? Do we have the right information? Do we have enough data source material? Does that person really have permission to sign a contract that will give us the money? All this information gathering is currently being shortcutted with AI. So it's not that AI gives cheat codes to criminals, but it does make certain things a lot cheaper for them. Meaning that where normally they would have a hammer, now they can turn that hammer into a scalpel and do more precise attacks. So it means that you don't have to drop your threat model right now, because oh no, phishing emails. But at the same time, there are things that we need to worry about, we need to prepare for. The problem, as I already mentioned, is that none of us know how all this stuff works completely. And neither do your colleagues at work or your family and friends, which means you get an email from some delivering company that says, there's a problem with your parcel. Like, oh no, a problem with my parcel. What do? Well, you click the link, right? That's what everyone does. So we've become very, very predictable when we use technology. I make phishing emails for a living, trying to make people, do things that I want them to do. So for certain things, people will not go for it, and for other things, they will, because that's kind of their inclination. And I see the same behavior when people use things like ChatGPT. And I used to be one of these nerds during the 80s and 90s going, we have computers now. So you drag all your friends and family by the collar and you show them, like, look at this magical thing. And the person goes, it's a black screen with a blinking cursor. And I go, yeah. And now I'm back with these people. And they go, let me guess, it's a black screen with a blinking cursor? Like, yeah, but now it's in a browser. Isn't it nice? And most people have no clue how to use LLMs. I compare it with like going to your favorite fast food restaurant, going into the drive-in, but there's no menu. So you go, I don't know, food, and you get they throw you some food, and you go, well, this sucks. It's like, yeah, but you're not asking the right questions. That is why if you come up with a question in your LLM that says, I want to check the color of email addresses. Is there a software, is there a Python library for that? I want to check the color. This is completely nonsensical, but you know, I'm trying to make a point. The LLM might actually hallucinate and say, yes, you need colored email verifier.npm or whatever thing you're using. It will make up stuff. But as I told you, we are very predictable people. So there's only going to be a certain amount of ways of asking the LLM for these kinds of questions. So what do attackers do? They already ask all these questions, see how the LLM goes completely off the rails and starts to suggest things that don't exist, and then actually create them. So plenty of people have fallen for these things, where they just install the module and go, oh, I didn't know there was a module for that. It's like, yeah, someone put it there probably last week, and he's not going to be your friend. But this is how we deal with technology. And we are all guilty of the same thing, where at a certain point we don't understand it anymore. I know we have a lot of bright minds in the room and at this conference. But some of you might be meeting up with friends this weekend to discuss your holiday plans, maybe for Easter or for whatever it is. So you gather with your friends and you get a bucket of coffee and you go, let's see where we can go. And then you open social media and it has an ad for the exact holiday location that you were thinking about. How is it? I know. They must be listening to me. Now, if you're into IT, then you know how absurd that sounds, because the infrastructure to be able to stream audio on that level and then filter the dirty audio for any kind of meaning, not only would different regulators and the EU nail them to the floor, but they don't have to listen to you. This whole thing of, yeah, but they must be recording me. Yes, conveniently forgetting that you've been giving away your data and metadata for the last 15 years. That's being enriched and sold, enriched and sold. There's a whole business sector that people simply don't know about. And unfortunately, and attackers know this, we are not just going to change our ways. Because I break into systems professionally and ethically. Most of you have maybe 2 passwords, and you kind of changed them a little bit, over the years. And it was all fun when someone was able to guess one of your security questions. But at this point, after having done this for more than 2 decades, I am convinced that people would rather rename their pet than actually change their security questions. Because it's not fun anymore, right? How many accounts do you have? Netflix and Outlook, and there's about 20 of them. So once you can guess some of these questions, which people still give real data to, then I'm going to be able to guess it. Which is a good thing, because then hopefully I can warn you so that the real bad guys, the non-ethical guys, cannot get in. So it's not just AI with the deepfakes and the misinformation. Think about how an attacker would use this. I live in Scandinavia. Scandinavia is known for its designer furniture. So when you go to big companies, there's usually, the lobbies filled with all kinds of stuff. That costs a lot of money. Let's say that I have, a really bad brain and I want to steal some of that designer furniture. Well, if I were to do this manually and Google then I would have to find a list of all companies that make designer furniture for an LLM like that. Done. List number 1, data set 1. 2, which big companies, Fortune 500 companies located in Scandinavia, have made some kind of press release or big brouhaha about we bought designer furniture. Data set 2. From all these different companies, which ones are the closest to me in this city so I can make a quick getaway and are really close to highways? Find me all the addresses. Give me all the ones that are only within a 2-3 kilometer radius of the highway. Data set number 3.5. And then you ask Google Earth, here are all the locations from the targets that I want to go for. Rotate the camera around all these buildings, data set number 4. Then compare those pictures with the data from last year and see if there's graffiti on the wall. If there's new graffiti on the wall, a bunch of teenagers have really easy access to the premises, which means that's the first one to go for. You see how this works? But of course, the main attention from most people and Hollywood and the media is autonomous attacks. Can we put something in the water that swims away and we don't know where it is? So I have a lab at home where, it looks like the internet, but it's not. It's my own little internet. So I've written bots that will just take exploit code from known exploits, so not 0 days, but 1 days, I suppose, that finds targets, scans the entire internet for vulnerable services, exploits those, gains access, lays low, installs the dependencies for doing the same thing, and you repeat the same thing for all known exploits, for all known vulnerabilities. The only thing you need to do is give the thing money so it can break in from cloud provider server to cloud provider server. But even then, it is possible. So I predict the most boring True Detective series on Netflix in a few years, where they just burst down the door and it's a small computer running a shell script. It's going to happen. But what about a bot that you give a name to? Let's say that because, for example, even Britney Spears' Instagram account has been used for command and control, where people were putting certain commands in there, and a bot was able to read that as the actual commands. What if I tell it, hey, find this person, and download any audio that you can find, deepfake the voice, and then start calling airports to say, hey, there's a special cake on the plane that starts with a B. You could do it. So how do we stop this? It goes even further than that. Can you make a bot, for example, pop up when you want it? Can you make it seasonal? So we have a whole future ahead of us with these kinds of things. So we need to be very strict on adding autonomy to anything. People sometimes tell me, yeah, well, it's good that we're having these discussions, so at least we won't have autonomous military AI-driven weapons. Well, I have news for you. Maybe you saw in 2011 that an elite Chinese hacker team paid by Iran brought down a drone, an American drone, where they basically shot a GPS signal at it to say, you're home, land. And it did. So command and control attacks are very common for this kind of technology. So what do you do as a defense mechanism? You program in the target and you cut off communication so the thing can do its own target selection. That's autonomy. We already have fully autonomous weapons when it comes to that. I would very much not like to see this in our daily lives with our data. So what about defense? Can we just throw the same amount of budget at it? No, as I told you, it's asymmetric. That means if I take 15 of your emails and I tell a generative AI engine, write me the next email, you are not detecting that email. Doesn't matter how many LLMs you have or how much budget, you will be drowning in false positives, which means it's no good. 50% is not good enough. So there is a very big asymmetry with how we're going to defend things with AI and how attackers will try to use anything that they can. And the one thing that, of course, AI is really good at is predicting the next thing. So unless I'm parachuting onto your roof, I need to get to your front gate break through your front gate. I'm making a house analogy now. I'm going to make all the cybersecurity people really angry because house analogies are kind of a faux pas. I have the front gate. I have the front yard. I have the front door. I have the kitchen, and then maybe your bedroom. So I need to move from A to B, B to C. Again, I'm excluding parachutes, catapults, whatever it is. Which means if I can make all the parts of my infrastructure a common language, and I can put that into a model, and a new vulnerability comes out for Microsoft, SharePoint, I don't know what, and you say, oh no, we actually are running that, then an LLM on the defensive side should be able to tell you what the next step could be. And if that actually interferes with what we call a critical function, so stuff of your infrastructure that keeps the lights on. So this attack path mapping, as we call it, this is really where AI excels. The problem is that companies are made out of so many suppliers that it's very hard to force your security model and your policy, down the ranks and down the street to all your different suppliers. Because guess what? Your suppliers have suppliers. And those suppliers, yeah, it's turtle suppliers all the way down. So how much can you enforce the security onto your suppliers and all these concentric circles? And that's the hard part, because we're again up against ourselves. We are where we are because we made things modular, from open source libraries to software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and consultancy as a service. We're putting all these things together, but the problem is that now you have a lot of moving parts. And that's not so nice when you're going through turbulent times as we're doing today. Because how much do you trust? How much do you enforce? And trust and hope is not exactly a good model that scales. And I hear this a lot. We don't need this kind of stuff, Tom, because we haven't been hacked for 15 years, so we must be doing something right. It's like, I've been playing on the highway for 15 years, and maybe I was just lucky. I'm not a target. Yeah, but they don't care about you. They care about the trusted network of people that you have. The network is the value. If you get an internal Teams message or Slack message or email, what are you going to do? Not click on it? That comes from an internal thing. Of course you're going to click on it. So that's why these paradigms like zero trust come in, which I think is the easy part, right? Zero trust, don't trust anything. Well, starting to trust something is the hard part, obviously. So when I break into companies, I try to make them better and better, saying when I go into the guest room, when I'm in the IT office, when I go and sit in the office of the CEO and I put a cable in the wall, I should see the exact same thing, which is the VPN service. Just like I'm coming from the internet. But you try explaining that sometimes to smaller companies that are in between two suppliers. If we touch this, we lose support. If we change it, it's going to cost us and we get the same result, at least to us. So what do you do about that? So the thing is, I'm not too worried about the short-term problems when it comes to the cat and mouse game of vulnerability, countermeasure. I'm more worried about what we expect from this technology. Because at a certain point, it is a black box. I use cloud services, but the cloud doesn't have a version number, does it? It's a collection. We want you to test our cloud service. Yeah, great, but what are you going to do with the results? Compare it to a completely different version? But we have to do something. So I leave you with a quote from Edward Wilson, who says, we have Paleolithic caveman emotions, medieval institutions, and godlike technology. We have to make sure that we make AI an extension of our intelligence and not an extension of our emotions, as we've done with social media. When Garry Kasparov lost against Deep Blue, he said that computers would be the end of chess. And yet AI has made chess even more popular, because when I'm playing against you, then the AI engine says, well, either this person is able to see 32 moves ahead, or he's cheating. Which means it makes the human factor better. We have electric cars that can go from 0 to 100 in under 2 seconds, but when the Olympics is on TV and we see people run, the oldest way of transportation, we all tune in. AI is asking us a question on what do we want to be in the future. There's all this, this turmoil about wanting to replace humans. I think we have enough humans. We can actually use a few more. So why don't we rename artificial intelligence to augmented intelligence? We need better tools for things that humans are really bad at, so that we can do the things that we're really good at. So that's why I want to make sure that, again, when you're doing all kinds of AI work, is that you always kind of keep common sense in the middle, and that you give everyone a seat at the table as far as where's the data coming from, how are we training it, what if we have an issue, can we backtrace a certain decision? I know it's non-deterministic, but can we backtrace that back to some kind of thing in our model? Because I would very much like to have everyone sit at the table of what we're going to do with AI in the future. So at least we can get to pick one of the futures and not have a future that we ended up in. Thank you very much.
We have a few minutes more. Are there any questions?
There's a microphone coming that will save your throat.
Hi. So I read about services like Hint.io or Recorded Future, companies that actually when you type your email, it can say where vulnerability happened and if your email and password are somewhere to be found to be in malicious threat or just not used for what it should be. How advanced are those services, and can we say that it protects us at some point of even information?
This is part of the ecosystem. So there are initiatives like, Have I Been Pwned, the initiative by a guy called Troy Hunt. So when certain places get broken into, your local pizza place, your electronics store, whatever it is, that information is sold on forums at a certain price. Once most people have bought this information and, of course, resold it and didn't tell the original seller at different prices, at a certain point, everyone has kind of the same data, and it kind of floats up. And that's where you can download it on certain forums where people or researchers have access to, because you have to be very careful for legal reasons what you do on those forums. And then those data sets get burned. And then they get added to those websites where you can see, okay, has my email address been used in some other either incident or is it on the market, so to speak. But that's only a fraction of what is out there. So just because you're not part of some of those public lists doesn't mean that you're not part of that. So you don't know. I don't know if where I ordered pizza last week, if that office has been completely compromised. The only thing that I can do is use a different email address there, so people cannot aggregate all the data, although with AI that is getting easier, and to make sure that you give them a hard time. So again, attackers have budgets and managers too. So you want to try and raise the cost of attack. And that's kind of the central rule of security, is that you don't have to run faster than the bear, you just have to run faster than your friends, right? Sorry, friends, but that's how it is.
Thank you very much.
More questions? The ice has officially been broken, so thank you for that. So.
Just a short comment over here. I'm Alexander Petrovic, a teaching assistant at Singidunum University. I just wanted to say that you're an excellent presenter and that I very much enjoyed your approach. I would only like to comment that I would like to hear more technical details from you in your next presentation, hopefully next year. But all in all, very, very enjoyable presentation. Thank you very much.
I appreciate you saying that. Yeah. This is a keynote, so it doesn't have many technical things in it. I do have very, very technical presentations as well, but who knows? Maybe next year. There are some cool war games or simulations you can play, for example, and trying to know how to bypass an LLM for your own gain, for example, or I'll admit to you, I am known for harassing bots. So I wrote a program in React where I take the web chat bot from McDonald's and put it in the same chat room as the one from some air agency, and then seeing two bots trying to cancel the travel insurance on a Big Mac. So you can do, or sometimes it just breaks the bots because they copy paste stuff into their own models and then it goes completely off the rails, which, I mean, what else are you going to do on a Friday evening, right? So, but yes, in my defense, I have also technical presentations, but this one was kind of kept non-technical. More questions?
No questions, no comments. Okay. Thank you very much, Tom. This was fascinating
Thank you.
presentation.